Hi there, welcome to this Sunday edition of This Is Exclusive, in which we're going to focus on the plight of the Hindu community in Bangladesh. They are being targeted, killed, and for no reason, except for that they are Hindus. Why is it happening? There are no triggers this time, except for this perception that they were voting for Awami League of Sheikh Hasina, and now that she's been ousted, Hindus become legitimate target, or are they? Because this is not the first time Hindus are getting targeted in Bangladesh. We are going to discuss all aspects of why this is happening. In this edition, let me get you the headlines first.
Presenting by Royal Global University. Northeast can't wait. Paro, kuch bano.
We want justice! We want justice! Bangladesh! Bangladesh!
Hindus across the globe unite against attacks on the community in Bangladesh as concerns continue to mount. Uproar over Kolkata trainee Dr. Abhaya's death. Hospital staff continues to hit the streets for a second day. Yet another shocking civic apathy in the national capital. 13-year-old electrocuted to death. A shocking hit-and-run case comes to light in Hyderabad. Pedestrian mowed down, killer driver on the run. Cops launch manhunt. Adani Group and SEBI chairperson deny Hindenburg's latest allegations, point by point.
By Royal Global University. Northeast can't wait. Paro, kuch bano.
Welcome back, friends. In today's episode of This Is Exclusive, I'll take you through the global outcry against the escalating violence against Hindus and minorities in Bangladesh. Across continents, from London to New York and from Stockholm to Jerusalem, protests have erupted demanding justice and an end to the targeted attacks. Our top story tonight covers the massive demonstrations in cities worldwide, highlighting the plight of the beleaguered Hindu community in Bangladesh and the international response, calling for immediate action. In fact, UK MP Bob Blackman, who took oath in the British Parliament last month on a copy of Bhagavad Gita along with the Bible, has also called for safeguarding Hindus amid global outcry. He, in fact, is joining us live, and he's connected with us, Bob Blackman. And very good evening from New Delhi to you, Mr. Blackman, and good afternoon there in London. You have a history of taking positions which are seen as pro-Hindu positions, including, of course, your oath-taking to in your parliament last month with a copy of Bhagavad Gita in your hands. And, of course, earlier you panned the BBC for its seemingly biased coverage of the consecration of the Ram Temple in the month of January this year. But, Mr. Blackman, we are discussing tonight the situation in Bangladesh, the way it has panned out, and one very visible aspect of which is the targeting of the minority communities in general and the Hindu community in particular, which happens to be the largest minority in Bangladesh. You have, of course, we have seen taken a position on this. How is the view from London there about what's happening in Dhaka?
Well, good evening, and great to be with you. But it's only a great shame that it's because of the circumstances that exist in Bangladesh. Now, as we know, Bangladesh owes its freedom to both India and the United Kingdom, having fought a civil war in 1971 to gain freedom. And the first duty of any government is to obviously protect their borders, but the second duty is to protect particularly the minorities that live within that country. Now, whatever one's views of the previous Prime Minister of Bangladesh, the reality is that there were attacks, there was violence going on, But since the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina, the position has become very, very problematic for Hindus in Bangladesh. There are riots, there's looting, there's people that have been murdered. And it appears that the police in Bangladesh are still on strike, which of course is causing the rioters and those that will do harm to the minorities the opportunity to go on literally on the rampage, as we're seeing on our screens across the world. Right. So we have an interim Prime Minister in Bangladesh. It is important for him to come out and be very clear that this rioting must stop. Those people that are responsible must be brought to justice, and the Hindus and other minorities, Christians, Jews, and other minorities, must be protected. And the reality is that they're not being protected right now, and it's important for them to do so. Now, I'm ashamed, actually, that we've heard no statement yet from the British government or even from the United States about the position in Bangladesh, because this is paramount and tantamount to certainly ethnic cleansing of the Hindu population. Potentially, people have called it a genocide. I think that's not quite right, but it's certainly a huge attack on the minority groups in Bangladesh.
Right.
And indeed, the people responsible, as I say, must be brought to justice.
Thanks, and I appreciate, Mr. Blackman, that you mentioned that the minorities continue to get targeted in Bangladesh, particularly the Hindu community. And you also said that surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly, there are no statements yet from London and Washington, D.C., from the respective governments in the United Kingdom and the United States. Is it, you think, because in some ways, the United States wanted this fate of Sheikh Hasina being ousted, insofar as the government in Dhaka is concerned, irrespective of whether there was any conspiracy or not, which is actually being talked about? We have Sheikh Hasina, who has come out with a statement saying that it was United States which wanted her out from the government. So you think the statements are not coming about the law and order situation in Bangladesh essentially because the governments in London and Washington, D.C. are actually okay with what has happened in terms of the regime change there?
Well, I think there's two things here. One is a regime change, and often the Americans may have perceived a view that Bangladesh had become too close to China, and therefore that was upsetting the delicate balance between the West and the East. And therefore they might want to seek regime change. But there is no justification whatsoever for failing to condemn what is going on in terms of the attacks on the minorities. And indeed, I'm surprised, disappointed that we're in a position now where neither governments from the United States or the UK, or indeed from across Europe, seem to have issued any statements condemning what's going on. Now, they might claim that some of this is unsubstantiated. I'm afraid I don't accept that. We've seen multiple videos, we've seen multiple news reports, we've seen multiple personal accounts of people that have either been attacked, their families have been attacked, or their communities have been attacked. We've seen the fires burning of Hindu villages. We can't hide that. And I think this has to be universally condemned, as I say, irrespective of who the government of Bangladesh are. I've had the opportunity during my years of service of visiting Bangladesh on a number of occasions and have seen the dramatic improvements there have been to the economy and the infrastructure in Bangladesh.
Right.
I think it's regrettable that the opposition parties decided to once again to boycott the elections in Bangladesh. I always take the view of saying you compete in elections. If you don't win and you think there's something irregular about the elections, that's the time to complain about it. But if you don't participate, you can't then complain.
Right. Mr. Blackman, you're right that there's some aspects of Bangladeshi politics which were not free and fair. But now, of course, a lot of water has flown down Padma. We are discussing the violence that has taken a very anti-Hindu, anti-minorities turn in Bangladesh. And you seem to be clearly deploring what is happening in Dhaka. But would you also implore the government in London to take a position on this so that there is some pressure on the interim government there in Bangladesh to make sure that this cycle of violence stops?
Yes, indeed. And the United Kingdom has always had a very strong relationship with Bangladesh. Ever since the father of the nation flew to London back in 1971 before taking power in Bangladesh. That relationship has always been very strong. So we have that lengthy relationship. And of course, we helped free Bangladesh from the constraints of being combined with Pakistan and with the brutal dictatorship that was taking place there. So the reality is that we have very strong relations. I think the other thing, which you haven't mentioned, is of course that Bangladesh has got very strong ties with India, and India-Bangladesh relations have got much better over the last few years. These riots and these attacks on Hindus risks the Bangladesh-India relationship breaking down. And I think that's to the detriment of Bangladesh and, of course, India.
True. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Blackman, for joining us with this perspective from London. Of course, India has some challenges going forward, and the government, of course, would be looking into those as we go ahead. Thank you so much again for joining us. Moving on, but staying with this story, protests have broken out across the world, from London to Washington, D.C., from New York to Stockholm, with Hindu community of Bangladeshi origin, but also from India, the Indian diaspora joining in those protests and building up pressure on the interim government in Dhaka to make sure that this violence against the Hindus in Bangladesh stops. Let's look at all those protests happening across the world.
We want justice! Don't kill it! We want justice! We want justice! We want justice!
London, New York, Israel, Sweden, India. The world has erupted in protest against the targeted violence against Hindus and minorities in Bangladesh. The protests took center stage in trouble-torn Bangladesh. At the receiving end of the horrific mob violence, arson and vandalism, members of the Hindu community in Bangladesh came out on the streets to protest against the atrocities. With their backs against the wall in the face of unrelenting attacks, the Hindus rallied on the streets of the besieged nation, seeking to draw global attention to their plight. Earlier, in his congratulatory message to Muhammad Yunus after he took over as the head of the new Bangladeshi interim government, Prime Minister Modi stressed on the need to protect the minorities from attacks. Meanwhile, the Hindus as well as the people from the Jewish community took to the streets in the United Kingdom to seek justice for the distressed minorities in Bangladesh in the face of attacks.
In Bangladesh, our brothers and sisters, our Hindu brothers and sisters in specific, they're being attacked for no reason at all. It went from protesting for the quota system to attacking our Hindu brothers and sisters for no reason, destroying temples, putting fire in people's houses for no reason. So we're protesting today to help our people.
Under the banner that read "Save the Hindus of Bangladesh," the protesters marched outside the British Parliament, calling on the world powers to stand with the minorities in the strife-torn country. Pratibha Datta from the World Council of Hindus, United Kingdom, said that the protest was in solidarity with the minorities of Bangladesh who are being subjected to unspeakable atrocities.
This protest today is in solidarity for all the atrocities happening in Bangladesh for the last few days. This protest was started off by the Hindu Bangladeshi students over here, and it has culminated in significant numbers of Hindu people turning up to express their concern about fellow Hindus in Bangladesh.
Ravi Bhanot from the Association of Hindu Organizations said that the minorities in Bangladesh were at the receiving end of ethnic cleansing.
We're here at a protest, House of Parliament, because of what's happening in Bangladesh. Hindus are being killed. The genocide. If you look at how many have been killed in the last few days on excuse of something totally unrelated, what has now happened is this ethnic cleansing going on. And where's the world news? Where is the defense for these people? And their only problem that people have with them is that they're Hindus. Is that a crime? It has to stop. We want the British government doing something to put pressure on the Bangladeshi government to stop what's happening and to stop right now.
The Hindu community also staged a symbolic protest with an orchestra at the Cathedral Square in London. That's not all. A large number of protesters also gathered outside the United Nations headquarters in New York in protest. Similar scenes were witnessed outside the Swedish parliament too, where protesters called out targeted attacks. With the genocide of Hindus in Bangladesh drawing global outrage and evoking calls for justice, can the world look away and play deaf?
In a controversial statement that has stirred significant debate, Farooq Abdullah, the chief of the Jammu and Kashmir National Conference, has once again made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Addressing recent spate of terror attacks in the region, Abdullah alleged a troubling nexus between terrorists and the defense forces, suggesting that the two are working in tandem. This provocative claim has ignited a firestorm of reactions, raising questions about the current state of security and the complex dynamics at play in Jammu and Kashmir. Remember, this is not the first time Farooq has said something like this, but let's listen in exactly to what he said before we have a conversation with former Deputy Chief Minister of J&K, Kavinder Gupta, on the other side.
इतनी फौज है हमारे बॉर्डर पे, मैं समझता किसी भी मुल्क में ऐसी इतनी फौज नहीं। फिर लोग कैसे आ रहे हैं? ये दवाइयां कैसे आ रही हैं? मिले हुए हैं, हमारी बर्बादी के लिए मिले हुए हैं।
Kavinder Gupta joins us now live from Jammu. Mr. Gupta, मिले हुए हैं। फारूक अब्दुल्ला कह रहे हैं कि हमारी जो फौज है और जो आतंकवादी है वो मिले हुए हैं। इसको आप कैसे बर्दाश्त कर रहे हैं वहां पे?
देखिए, शायद इनके खून में ही खराबी है। 1947 से लेकर के आज तक जो इनके पिता दादा ने सब कुछ किया है, ये उसी का परिणाम है कि इस प्रकार की हालत यहाँ पर बना के रखी है। 1947 में जब कबायलियों ने हमला किया था, तब नेहरू और शेख अब्दुल्ला ने मिलकर के भारत को धोखा दिया था, जम्मू कश्मीर को एक तरह से बेचा था। तो ये आज भी ये लोग जो तीन बार 3 पीढ़ियां सत्ता में रह चुकी हैं, भारत के संविधान की कसम खा चुकी हैं, लेकिन जब ये सत्ता से बाहर होते हैं तो इस प्रकार की बातें करते हैं। आज भी इनका दिल हिंदुस्तान के लिए नहीं, पाकिस्तान के लिए धड़कता है। और बहुत शर्मनाक बात है कि इस प्रकार से कहना, जो लोग हमारे जम्मू कश्मीर भारत की एकता और अखंडता के लिए अपना जान तक कुर्बान करते हैं, आज वो 20-20, 25-25 साल के वो बच्चे जो हमारे जवान हैं, उन्होंने अपने बलिदान दिया है। तो उस पर इस प्रकार की भाषा बोलना, मुझे लगता है कि ये उम्र का भी तकाजा है, और खास करके इस प्रकार की भाषा बोलने के लिए देश से माफी चाहिए। और जो हमारी सेना के खिलाफ लोकतंत्र में इतना भी बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जा सकता कि कोई कुछ भी बोले। ये INDI गठबंधन की एक जो इस वक्त पूरे वर्ल्ड में भारत को बदनाम करने की एक साजिश चल रही है, बाहर से पैसा आता है, हिंडनबर्ग का भी अभी खुलासा हुआ है, ये सभी लोग उनसे मिले हुए हैं। तो खास करके ये इनके पास एक मौका है, ये समझते हैं कि पाकिस्तान का समर्थन करके और उनकी सेनाओं का समर्थन करके, उनसे बातचीत की वकालत करके किस प्रकार से फौजों को बदनाम करें। लेकिन आज इनकी जो राजनीतिक दुकानदारी बंद है, फ्रस्ट्रेशन है, उसी के कारण से इस प्रकार की भाषा का ये प्रयोग किया जा रहा है।
नहीं गुप्ता जी, पर ये जो इन्होंने बात कही है फारूक अब्दुल्ला ने, ये किसको सुना रहे हैं? ये कि क्या इस तरह के विचार की कोई कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी है क्या जम्मू एंड कश्मीर में, कि चुनाव आ रहा है तो चलो ऐसी बात कर दें तो वोट मिल जाएगा?
ऐसा नहीं है कि कुछ लोग ये समझते हैं कि हमने एंटी इंडिया प्रचार करके और पाकिस्तान प्रस्ती करके हमेशा से लोगों को खराब किया है, गुमराह किया है। कुछ लोग उस प्रकार से इस चीज को हवा देते थे, लेकिन आज भारत सरकार ने जिस प्रकार से अपनी इच्छा शक्ति रख के हुर्रियत और जमायत जैसे जो संगठन थे, जो पाकिस्तान से पैसा लेकर के उनके इशारों पर काम करते थे, आज उनको बैन करके, समाप्त करके उस सोच को बंद किया है। लेकिन ये फिर से उसी प्रकार का जम्मू कश्मीर बनाना चाहते हैं जिसमें एक तमाम वर्ग को वहां से निकाला गया, हिंदू धर्म के लोगों को निकाला गया, कश्मीरी पंडितों को निकाला गया। ये उस प्रकार का माहौल क्रिएट करना चाहते हैं चंद वोटों के कारण से। लेकिन आज लोग इनकी असलियत समझने लगे हैं और लोग ये चाहते हैं कि जिस प्रकार से इन्होंने लोकसभा के इलेक्शन में हमारे दो जो चीफ मिनिस्टर थे, चाहे वो उमर अब्दुल्ला था, चाहे वो महबूबा मुफ्ती थी, उस सोच को निकारा है। तो मुझे लगता है कि इस सोच के लिए ना तो जम्मू कश्मीर में कोई जगह रही है, लेकिन ये आज भी उस चीज को हवा देना चाहते हैं जिसको कोई भी देशभक्त बर्दाश्त नहीं करेगा। और इस प्रकार के लोगों पर मुकदमा चलाना चाहिए ताकि ये सेना जो हमारी सीमाओं की रक्षा करती है, हमारे देश की रक्षा करती है, विपरीत परिस्थितियों में काम करते हैं, तो उसमें इस प्रकार की जो एक इन्होंने बात कही है वो सरासर गलत है।
गुप्ता जी, पर सरकार तो आपकी है। अगर आप कह रहे हैं मुकदमा करना चाहिए तो आपकी सरकार है, दिल्ली में कर सकती है, मुकदमा क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं? क्योंकि ये पहली बार तो है नहीं कि फारूक अब्दुल्ला इस तरह के गैर जिम्मेदाराना बयान दिए हैं।
देखिए, संविधान के दायरे में जो भी होगा उसको करेंगे और करना भी चाहिए। जहां तक जम्मू कश्मीर का प्रश्न है, ये वहां पर सेनाओं के ऊपर खास करके बॉर्डर पर इस प्रकार की भाषा का प्रयोग करना, सेना के खिलाफ बोलना, तो हम भी यही चाहेंगे कि इस पर एक एक्शन लिया जाना चाहिए जिसके कारण से दोबारा इस प्रकार की जो भाषा है उस पर कोई भी प्रयोग ना करे।
गुप्ता साहब, आपको मैं जाने से पहले एक और सवाल पूछूंगा, क्योंकि अभी जनरल इलेक्शंस में जो नॉर्थ कश्मीर की सीट थी बारामूला, जहां से फारूक अब्दुल्ला के बेटे उमर अब्दुल्ला लड़े थे और हार गए, और वो लांगेट के जो इंजीनियर हैं वो जीते, राशिद इंजीनियर, तो क्या फारूक अब्दुल्ला को ऐसा लग रहा है कि एक सेपरेटिस्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी तो है, लेटेंट वोट है, और उसको लेने के लिए इस तरह की आप गैर जिम्मेदाराना बात करके निकल सकते हैं?
देखिए, ये कोशिश तो करेंगे। वहां इस प्रकार का कंपटीशन है कि कौन ज्यादा एंटी इंडिया बोलता है, लेकिन लोगों की जो मानसिकता है वो काफी हद तक बदल चुकी है और लोग इस प्रकार के दो परिवारों से जो तंग आ चुके थे, उसी के कारण से उन्होंने हराया है। लोग चेंज चाहते थे और नई सोच चाहते थे। आज जो जीते हैं वो भी वो चाहते हैं कि भारत में जो एक सोच है ये देशभक्ति की, उसके हिसाब से चलें। तो वहां का नौजवान आज मिलिटेंसी की तरफ आकर्षित नहीं होता है, आज वो खेलों की तरफ जा रहा है। आज लोगों को एक रोजगार जो मिला है, 2 करोड़ के लगभग वहां पर टूरिस्ट आए हैं, उसके माध्यम से रोजगार बढ़ा है, लोग उस तरफ चल रहे हैं। आज स्कूल 24 घंटे लगते हैं, आज पत्थरबाजी वहां पर नहीं होती। इन सभी विषयों को लें तो एक चेंज वहां पर आ रही है, लेकिन इनकी दुकानदारी तो इसी से चलती थी जब मिलिटेंसी बिल्कुल तेजी से थी। आज भी वहां इस प्रकार का माहौल क्रिएट करना चाहते हैं।
चलिए, धन्यवाद मिस्टर गुप्ता। आपकी सरकार है, आप चाहें तो दुकान उनकी बंद कर सकते हैं, इट्स अप टू यू। Hopefully you would maybe make a representation to the center to do something about these kind of irresponsible statements. Thank you so much for joining us this Sunday evening, and we come to an end of this edition of This Is Exclusive. Remember what's happening in Bengal also, with that horrific rape and murder of intern doctor. We are calling her Abhaya, and we'll make sure that justice is delivered, police acts